Super Smash Bros. For the N64 is one of the very first video games I remember playing and would consider myself good at. I had those level 3 CPUs shaking in their boots, broke all the targets, boarded all the platforms, and conquered classic mode on the easiest of difficulties. After defeating Master Hand and watching the credits roll, a new challenger appeared, and this challenger was Jigglypuff, who would go on to become part of Smash Bros. Original 12. You would assume that being a part of the founding fathers and mothers of Super Smash Bros. Who laid out the foundation for the franchise would give you a guaranteed spot on the roster. After all, if we take a look at our friend Jigglypuff here, she has been a playable character in every single Smash game so far. But, as it turns out, this doesn't mean that Jigglypuff never found herself on Sakurai's chopping block. This is how Jigglypuff was almost cut. Before delving into how Puff was almost cut, I think it's important to look back at how she even made the cut in the first place, because Gen 1 had some pretty strong candidates to fight alongside Pikachu. Sakurai could have gone with an iconic Pokemon like Charizard, who ended up appearing as a Pokeball Pokemon, and there was a time when Mewtwo was actually planned to be a part of the roster, but was cut at some point during development. So why did he pick Jigglypuff? In a 64 Dream interview, Sakurai was asked why is Jigglypuff a hidden character, and he replied by saying that regular fighting games have template bodies for characters, but the 8 core characters of the Super Smash Bros. Roster had very different body types, and the animations for each character taking damage, falling, rising, and grabbing the ledge had to be unique. When Sakurai and the HAL crew were choosing Smash 64's hidden characters, their mindset was to work smarter, not harder, and they borrowed the body types of characters they already finished putting together. Kirby's body was used to put Jigglypuff together since they're both pink circular puffballs. However, there was another pink Generation 1 Pokemon who could have stolen Puff's roster spot, and this Pokemon was Clefairy. When choosing Pokemon's second Smash Bros. Combatant, HAL thought to themselves, who are the popular Pokemon? And in the end, it came down to Clefairy and Jigglypuff. Sakurai decided that Jigglypuff was the better fit for the role since he wanted there to be a joke character in the game, and he also thought that Puff's characteristics and personality felt more fitting for a punching bag. Putting this slander to the side, Jigglypuff cemented herself as part of the original 12 when Super Smash Bros. Released in Japan on January 21st, 1999, and a few months later in Canada during April. Jigglypuff's status as a joke character is pretty clear. She's the lightest character in the game, and her special moves, or as I like to call them, B moves, seem lackluster when compared to her peers. You've got Samus's Charge Shot, Donkey Kong slamming the ground and causing earthquakes, Kirby's Rock, and who could forget the iconic Falcon Punch. Now, let's see what Jigglypuff is working with. Pound is no Falcon Punch by any means, but it helps her recover, Sing puts her enemies to sleep, and then there's Rest, which looks completely useless. However, unless you've been living under Kirby's down B for the past 20 years or so, you would know that Rest is Jigglypuff's most powerful attack, and if spaced just right, can completely obliterate her enemies. Even though Sakurai designed Puff to be the weakest character, that's not how things played out. I'm no competitive Smash 64 expert by any means, but based on a tier list from 2015, which is the newest one I could find, Puff is chilling in the B tier, while Kirby, the only reason she's even in this game, is sitting pretty in the S tier with Pikachu. Personally, I like the B tier the most because you got Jigglypuff and Mario in there, and B is clearly the best letter. But with Melee on the horizon, things were about to change. Melee was an opportunity to bring in some of the characters that didn't make the first Smash Bros. Roster, like Mewtwo, Bowser, and Marth, while adding in a bunch of new characters. It took Sakurai and the HAL Lab crew around 13 months to cook up Melee, which released in Japan on November 21st, 2001, and in the true north on December 3rd. So some of the characters were a bit undercooked, while others like Wario and Lucas didn't even make the cut and were saved for later. When it came to Jigglypuff, Sakurai was on the fence about bringing her back for Melee. Based on a translation of Jigglypuff's page on Melee's website, Sakurai was torn about whether to cut Puff or bring her back. In the end, he didn't want to leave all the loyal Jigglypuff mains behind, so Puff was brought back for Melee. For a Puff player like me, this is music to my ears. But for any space animals out there, the heaven that could have been Melee without Jigglypuff being robbed must be some pretty tragic news. To make matters worse for our furry friends, since Pichu took on Puff's role as Melee's joke character, Sakurai decided that it would be a good idea to buff Puff. And if you know anything about Melee Jigglypuff, she is an absolute menace. For starters, Rest is absolutely bonkers in Melee, and what makes it such a great move is how Puff has tons of reliable rest setups. There's up throw rest for dealing with Fox and Falco, up tilt rest, up air rest, nair rest, pound to rest, tech chase rest, crouch under a grab and rest, rest out of shield, jab reset rest, dare rest is technically a thing, and of course there is the classic puff it we ball rest. Next up is the Wall of Pain, which is a very fancy way of describing spamming back air over and over and over again. Melee Puff's back air is so iconic because of its absurd hitbox, which in combination with her amazing aerial mobility makes it a great poking tool. It can also combo into itself or into a rest, and this really makes me wonder what Sakurai was smoking when he said that Jigglypuff's reach and power are bad, because I'd like some of that. Anyhow, Puff's other aerials are pretty good as well. Forward air is good for edge guarding, down air can combo into grab or up smash, up air comes in handy for juggling Puff's enemies, and her neutral air is pretty nice because it can combo into forward smash with a soft hit, and I like to do this nifty rest combo with it back in my melee heyday. Another area where Jigglypuff truly shines is her recovery. Thanks to Pound and all of her jumps, Jigglypuff can just dilly-dally her way back to the stage after being knocked off. While Puff's floatiness is one of her greatest strengths, there are times where it's her biggest weakness. Some people would consider Jigglypuff to be a glass cannon. Sure, she can take a stock at super early percents, but the trade-off is that she can lose her stock at early percents as well. On paper, this glass cannon label for Jigglypuff seems spot on. She is tied for the second lightest character in the game with Mr. Game & Watch, so she would die earlier than almost every other character in the game to a strong attack. However, in practice, Puff's floatiness actually makes her really difficult to combo when compared to fast fallers like Fox and Falco, who are scrumptious combo food. A big reason why Fox does so well against Jigglypuff in my scrubby opinion is because he has so many reliable ways to take her stock. You've got up throw up air, jab up smash, nair up smash, and his quick strong attacks like up tilt can handle a pesky Puff who overstays her welcome. That's why I consider Jigglypuff to be more of a plexiglass cannon. If a character has a solid way to take care of her, she'll die early, but if they don't, Jigglypuff can stick around for a very long time. On top of that, she is always such a threat because all it takes is one little itty-bitty mistake for Melee Puff to crush your hopes and dreams. I can't talk about Melee Puff without mentioning the introduction of Headband Puff and Crown Puff, which are her two best looks. Personally, I'm more of a Crown Puff guy, but these outfits are top-notch. If you couldn't tell, I love Melee Puff. She's my main and not just my favorite Smash Bros character, but one of my favorite video game characters of all time. Chances are I'm wearing the official Jigglypuff Crocs as I'm recording this audio and putting this video together. So I could go on and on and on, talking about how absurdly broken and awesome Melee Puff is, which makes what happened to her in Brawl a tragedy. Super Smash Bros. Brawl released in the Land of the Rising Sun on January 31st, 2008, and a few months later in the Land of the Maple Leaf on March 9th. As a kid, I played a ton of Brawl, and part of that was playing through the Subspace Emissary. It's been so long since I played through it, but I remember the cutscenes, the boss battles, and having a pretty fun time. Although, I do remember really hating the Great Maze, but seeing all these characters come together and play a role in a big adventure was awesome. You could say that Brawl and the Subspace Emissary walked so Infinity War and Endgame could run. You know, because if Brawl tried to run it, would have tripped. Jokes aside, at the very end of the Subspace Emissary, all the characters gathered for a final battle against this blue guy named Taboo. Well, except for Wolf, Toon Link, and our good old friend Jigglypuff, which is a really odd trio, but why didn't they show up? Big Sack revealed in an interview with Nintendo Dream that Wolf, Toon Link, and Puff were on the brink of being cut from Brawl's roster. So the reason why this trio was a bunch of no-shows in the Subspace Emissary was because the main characters had to have confirmed roster spots early on in Brawl's development. This meant that characters like Jigglypuff couldn't play a role in the story, which is why she only shows up after all the hard work has been done. But at least she got a neat little cutscene. Now if Melee Puff showed up, all she would need to do is throw out a couple of back airs, take a little nap, and Taboo would have been toast. But maybe the reason why Brawl Jigglypuff only rolled out of her Pokeball after all the hard work was done is because she's a shell of her former self. With Pichu being cut from the roster, Jigglypuff went from being a character who struck fear into the hearts of her enemies with the power to destroy worlds to becoming a complete joke. Now, I'm no competitive Brawl expert by any means, and the peak of my Brawl skills was rolling around the stage and using the good old reliable jump to the top of the screen and Kirby down B strat, but based on the most recent Brawl tier list I can get my hands on, Jigglypuff finds herself all the way down in the F tier and is considered a bottom 5 character, which is the polar opposite to how good she was in Melee, a more fast-paced and combo-heavy game, well, at least most of the time, while Brawl's a bit more chill, floaty, and laid back. This meant that Jigglypuff lost a lot of her strong combos from Melee, and to make matters worse, Puff's Smash Bros. Dojo page highlights how rest was severely nerfed. Let me illustrate to you just how bad this nerf truly was. Melee's biggest competitively legal stage is Dreamland 64, and from the center of the stage, Rest will always take care of a Fox's stock at around 30%. Now let's skedaddle on over to Brawl, where Pokemon Stadium is one of these smaller legal stages, and the earliest percent that Rest will take a fellow Puff stock is at 52%. And keep in mind that Jigglypuff is the lightest character in Brawl, so this nerf was truly abysmal. Brawl Rest does leave the opponent with a little flower on their head, which is a bit goofy, it's fun, and does some damage over time, but I'd much rather erase my enemies from existence. The nerfs don't end there. While Brawl introduced Jigglypuff's sleeping hat costume, which is really one of her best outfits, it came at the cost of her crown and headband, which still have not returned to the series. But a cool thing that Brawl brought to the table was a Smash Ball, which when broken allows the characters to perform a final smash. If you've made it this far in the video and enjoy what you've seen so far, consider dropping a like or even subscribing to see more of my videos in the future. Putting my shameless self-promotion to the side, when Mario gets his hands on the Smash Ball, he unleashes a fiery vortex, and Link locks his enemies in the Triforce to slice and dice them. So what devastating attack does Jigglypuff unleash? Jigglypuff becomes super big, knocks anybody close to her away, and then deflates back to her original size. On smaller stages, Jigglypuff's final smash can be pretty good, but on the bigger stages, it's nothing to write home about. Honestly, I look at Puff's final smash as a reminder of her joke character role, and that's really what got her to the dance in the first place. It took Sakurai 3 tries, but he finally achieved his goal of making Jigglypuff a weakling in a punching bag. I guess the third time was the charm, but in the next Smash Bros games, this trend continued. Smash for 3DS released in Japan on September 13th, 2014, and for me and my fellow Canadians to buy with loonies and toonies on October 4th. When it came to the Wii U version, Canada got it first on November 21st, while Japan had to wait all the way until December 6th. Now look, I don't know if I'm about to say some crazy hot take here, but can we all agree that the 3DS version of Smash 4 is clearly superior? Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to dunk on the Wii U or anything like that, but the novelty of being able to play Smash Bros on the go was neat, and it also had Smash Run. Sure, the 3DS wasn't the most comfortable controller, but Smash for 3DS was a pretty nifty game. Unfortunately, the 3DS is to blame for the Ice Climbers being cut from the roster. Its hardware was simply too feeble to handle a bunch of Popos and Nanas jumping on the screen in 3D. But thankfully for our friend Jigglypuff here, the 3DS could handle her just fine. I couldn't find any juicy details or tea about Puff's Smash 4 roster spot being in jeopardy. However, what I did find was that the Smash for 3DS devs took the Smash 64 design philosophy of borrowing body types to the next level when it came to Jigglypuff. Rather than just taking Kirby's model and puffing it up, Sakurai and Co took Jigglypuff's model from Pokemon X and Y, changed her textures a bit so it wasn't obvious they copied Game Freak's homework, and then dropped it into Smash for 3DS. In Smash 4, Jigglypuff did get a couple of new hats, but sadly she kept her weakling punching bag status as some tier lists place her at the very bottom. It didn't help that Jigglypuff never got any meaningful buffs throughout the entirety of Smash 4, which came to an end when Smash Ultimate entered the picture. The Nintendo Direct at E3 in 2018 revealed that Jigglypuff, alongside every other character who ever appeared in Smash Bros, would return in Smash Ultimate, which released for the Nintendo Switch on December 7th, 2018. The whole "everyone is here" gimmick meant that Jigglypuff never had to worry about losing her roster spot. While Pichu did get the Melee Puff treatment of going from a joke character to becoming really good before being nerfed back down to earth, Jigglypuff in Ultimate has just been kind of okay. I'm not a competitive Ultimate player, the online in that game is complete buns, but Ultimate Jigglypuff feels a lot better to play as compared to Smash 4 Jigglypuff. Is she the best character? No, she's not, because Smash Ultimate's top tiers are simply built different. Just look at Steve, he's a real crafty customer, and when he's on the screen I have no clue what he's even doing half the time. To my knowledge, Jigglypuff does have some solid combos and rest setups these days, and I feel that Ultimate gave Puff more personality. Seeing her smile as she throws out a backer is just beautiful, and her new rest animation is adorable. Nintendo's recent actions have shown me that they love money, and I get it, okay? I love money as well, so I don't think it's crazy to think that somewhere down the line there will be a new Smash Bros game for the Switch too. Maybe I'm just being pessimistic, but I don't see them bringing everybody back again if that happens. And if history has taught us anything, it's that despite her veteran status, Jigglypuff's roster spot isn't guaranteed and she may find herself back on the chopping block, but only time will tell.